I definitely took it personally when I learned that plastics were threatening the oceans, because I was like, wait a minute, like, I don't want to lose this as well. Like, I'm going to fight for this because I can, and it's important. And like, we rely on the health of our planet to survive. Like, where is the disconnect? It's so crazy to me.
And we're live. Kate Nelson, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Living the dream. We're here with the legendary plastic-free mermaid, the one and only.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's so good to be here with you.
When did you have that moment where you're like, you know what? I am the plastic-free mermaid.
Wow, what a question. It's just been a really organic evolution. It hasn't really been like, it wasn't like I put a flag in the ground and declared it. I've been a mermaid. The ocean is my playground. I surf, I sail, I free dive. And so I've identified as a mermaid for a long time. I was like this avid water woman. And I quit plastics 10 years ago. So I share my plastic-free lifestyle, and I'm a mermaid. So it's just very natural.
It's so cool that we have this medium of social media to be able to reach people all around the world and spread this message. And this message that you're spreading is really, you're paving a path. And a lot of people want to help the environment. We know there's an issue, but most people just don't know what to do. We don't know what's the daily things. And you educate people so well on your channel at Plastic Free Mermaid on all of these things. So I would like to kind of get started and kind of understand, what has it been like creating this lifestyle? Because when we spoke before, you mentioned you kind of are pioneering this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I quit plastics 10 years ago because I found out that they don't biodegrade and that they're collecting in our oceans. And I was in college and, drinking out of red Solo cups and going to class with a smoothie in a plastic cup with a plastic lid and a plastic straw. And this is every day, having a coffee with a plastic lid and a paper cup lined with plastic, and having salads in plastic containers. So it was just so much. So to learn that this material that we use on a constant daily basis, and only use it for like 10 minutes, that just gets thrown away and then exists where we leave it for thousands of years. It just felt so irresponsible. So I stopped using plastics, and it just like sharing my lifestyle was quite natural. I mean, it was really more about like experimenting and trying to figure out what to use instead. So I suppose I appreciate you using the word pioneer. I definitely felt like it's been far less graceful as I've tried to figure out, all these alternatives, and had to say no to the smoothies and no to the coffees, as I figured out, okay, like I can build a habit and bring my own cup, and really kind of like struggling through the challenges of trying to use less plastics, and then sharing that journey, and now more people are interested and engaged and have caught on. So it's an absolute pleasure and a privilege to be able to share this lifestyle.
It's people like you that inspire the normal person to make a change of this magnitude. My question for you is, what would you say to the person that thinks that they're just one person? Just one person. I'm not going to impact the environment. What can I do? What's me just recycling going to do? What would you say to encourage that person to be part of the solution?
Well, I'm just one person, and I've impacted millions of people through my work. So, and it's just been, I haven't been forcing or pushing or being aggressive about my lifestyle. It's been, I've tried to lead by example and inspire people to change. And I think that's the power of the individual is before we point fingers and tell people you shouldn't do this and criticize them for their lifestyle and their choices. I think it's so much more powerful and sustainable. Like, this change really takes root when we can lead by example and have this like positive, beautiful, kind of like my take on it is like this sparkly, magical mermaid, to make it appealing and interesting and engaging for others. So they're like, oh, wow, that's a beautiful cup. And I'm like, oh, thank you. I use this because I try to avoid single-use plastics because they're really bad for the environment and they're actually bad for my health as well. So like make things a talking point. You know, I go to parties and I bring my own cup. We're doing
BYOC.
BYOC, BYOB, bring your own bottle. You know, like there's so many ways to lighten our footprint, and it can be talking points, and it can be, you know, or if you like be that friend in your friend group that brings people straws or brings people cups and be like, hey, I'm not going to use plastics at this festival or party. Like I brought you a cup too in case you want to do that as well. And like make it easy for people. We absolutely have an impact. Like one person, it's all that matters, you know. It's like one person starts a movement, it ripples outwards. So we're so powerful as human beings, and it's just remembering that. It's just remembering how powerful we are and how every purchase matters. It's like voting with our dollar what we're supporting. So, you know, and if you've seen that, have you seen that video on YouTube with the turtle with the straw stuck up its nose?
It's terrible.
Oh,
terrible.
Yeah, that's a tough one to watch. But if that, you know, one person whose ever straw that was, it made a big difference.
It's interesting. It's interesting because of the microplastics too. I mean, there's the plastics we can see, but there's also all these microplastics littering even the deepest areas of the ocean that I believe I read a stat saying that the average human is actually consuming a certain level of plastics every single day because, you know, you can't avoid it.
A credit card's worth of plastic every week is the amount that we consume. And you're right, like this is a whole rabbit hole. So feel free to get me out of this at any point, but because I could talk about this stuff for hours. But yeah, microplastics are just one of the threats that we can't see from plastics. So, and actually microplastics we can see because those are about the size of a sesame seed, and then they can get smaller. And then it's the nanoplastics that we can't see. And those are the real worry for sure, like the microfibers that shed from our clothing, which is why we should wear natural fibers, or wash our clothing in like the backyard to kind of like catch all of the microfibers. I digress. But then there's also there's a lot here. And then there's also the chemicals that we're exposed to. So plastics, the physical part is which you mentioned. If you imagine like a block of styrofoam and you're kind of like rubbing it, and you can imagine like the flakes of styrofoam that would flake off, that's similar to what's happening anytime you crinkle plastic packaging or take a plastic lid on and off. It's that friction that's then like flaking off these microplastics, these nanoplastics that we can't see. So that's how these particles are being released into the air, into the dust, into our water, into our food, into our drink, into our face products, all these things. So we're exposed to all these particles of plastics, but then also the plastics leach chemicals. So they're not these like really secure, stable substances. They leach in multiple instances. Do you want me to go into that, or do you want to
I want you to go into that.
Okay. Great. I want to go into it too. Okay. So plastics leach in 3 circumstances. So heat, duration, and fat. So if you have, let's have the example of like a plastic cup. So instead of bringing your own cup, ceramic, that's very safe and healthy and good for the environment. Say you get a takeaway cup from the cafe, like a paper cup that's lined with plastic, because if your paper cup wasn't lined with plastic, what happens when paper gets wet? It's soggy, disintegrates, you know? So like any paper cup, if it's not leaking and it's full of liquid, is lined with plastic. Just remember that.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So, and if you put a hot liquid into a plastic cup, or if you put hot soup into a plastic container, or your takeaway food is in a plastic container, the plastic is going to be attracted to that heat. So it's going to leach from the container or from the cup into your coffee or into your like pad thai or whatever it is that or your Tupperware. If you're putting it into the microwave and you're microwaving your food in a plastic container or bowl or whatever in the microwave, heats up, the chemicals in the plastic container leach into your food. Okay, second instance for the chemicals to leach, duration. So something's like sitting on the shelf for like 3 months or a year, whether it's your like face cream that's stored in a little plastic tub, or it's your Tetra Pak, your like shelf stable milk that's like stored in a cardboard box that's lined with plastic. Chips, whatever. If it's sitting there for a while, it's more likely for these chemicals to leach from the container into the substance. Third one, fat. So these chemicals in plastic containers are lipophilic. So they're actually attracted to fat. So back to the coffee example, if you get a latte and now your coffee is full of like milk, some kind of milk, nut milk or whatever, cow milk, the plastic is going to be attracted to the beverage because of the fat content as well. Same as like your takeaway. If it's like this greasy, delicious pad thai or something and it's in one of those like plastic takeaway containers, it's attracted to the grease. Again, the Tetra Pak, the shelf-stable milk example, that's storing fat, so it's attracted. So all these chemicals leach into the thing. Same as like face products, any butters or oils, same thing. And what these chemicals do is they mimic estrogen in the body. So when we drink our coffee or eat the pad thai or the milk or put the face product on our skin that's been stored in plastic, these chemicals then enter our bloodstream either through our digestive tract or through our skin, and they circulate throughout our body and they tell our body estrogen, 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 which is a hormone. So it's disrupting our endocrine system. And the message that a ton of estrogen sends to our body, regardless of our gender, is to gain weight, for our chest to grow. So men experience like increased breast size. It disrupts. Yeah, I know. Man boobs.
Man boobs. There it
is. Man boobs. Plastic causes man boobs. It's proven. Okay.
It is proven. When you say it's proven, there's studies that show all of that.
There is science.
Amazing.
There is science. Look it up. Gynomastia or something. Okay, it also disrupts our mood cycles, which leads to depression. So like this disrupting, like all your moods are all over the place. I can go on and on with all of these, but basically it really disrupts the reproductive system. This leads to infertility. It leads to reduced sperm count in men. In women, there's a whole range of reproductive issues. The main one, as I said, is infertility. So it's a really sensitive subject as well, especially these days when people have been exposed to plastics for so long and they're struggling to get pregnant. And there's also, when children are exposed, children are always the most susceptible to this sort of like chemical toxic exposure. It leads to ADHD, it leads to child obesity. It also promotes over like cell growth. If you can imagine, like it's causing us to gain weight and fat to grow. It's causing like cell growth in general, which can lead to cancer, heart disease. Just so many horrible diseases and results from these chemicals, these toxic chemicals entering our bodies.
It's interesting because there's so much negatives that you just mentioned there, and it makes sense. Everything you just mentioned, I can conceivably understand what you're talking about. Would you say the guy that created plastic, the first person who ever created plastic, almost, had good intentions, but it just it spiraled out of control like most good things?
Oh yeah. It's like any technology. It's not like the technology or the plastic is inherently bad or negative or evil. It's our use of it. It's our manipulation of this technology or our lack of foresight. It's our lack of truly assessing the impact or the consequences of mass use of this material. Like it was first really adopted during World War II when soldiers were off at war and they needed this like highly durable, lightweight, weather resistant material for helmets and various applications at war. It was really handy. And then the women back home were in the workforce. They had to enter the workforce but also raise the family and clean the house and all these things. And so they were like, great, let's use plastic here as well. So they made TV dinners and they made plastic cups and plates and silverware. So you didn't have to do the dishes. It was like easy, like microwave the dinner, put it on the table, sweep it all off into the trash, like easy. Oh. Yeah. So it was like at that point, it was like, oh my gosh, this is like what a luxury to be able to just throw all this stuff away. And it became this sort of like status symbol to just be like, oh, I can just throw it away. So it was good intentioned, but we didn't think, where's all this stuff going to go? And actually the plastics industry is responsible for creating the recycling system, which has never worked, let me just say, but they're responsible for creating that because they're like, oh, we don't want people to feel guilty about throwing all this stuff away. Let's create this magical recycling bin to make people feel better about putting their plastics in it.
The placebo recycling bin. Is there technology today that is capable we're talking the best of the best of the technology that is capable of completely dissolving and minimizing the effects of plastic?
Um, okay. I'm not really sure what you mean. There is technology available
Can I
to
take a
recycle.
Tupperware and throw it into a machine and it shoots out something that's completely environmentally friendly?
Oh my gosh. No. Okay, let's back up. Recycling, the reason I say recycling is like this magical box is because in theory everything is recyclable,
Mm-hmm.
like all plastic is recyclable. That's why it's got stamped with like the various little like recycling symbols on the bottom, and everyone's like, ooh, this is recyclable,
It's
great,
great marketing. Yeah.
let me put it in the bin. And like all these manufacturers are able to like put the recycling stamp on all their stuff to be like, it's recyclable. And then everyone feels good because they buy a thing that's recyclable. Tetra Packs, full of recycling signs. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say Tetra Packs? Like the almond milk or the soy milk, the box that they come in.
Now I do.
Yeah, with the plastic lid.
Okay.
Or coconut waters, a lot of those come with in the same thing. So that's a multi-material product or multi-resource product. So it's got plastics, it's like the shiny outside layer, and then cardboard, which makes it look eco because it's like, oh, it's a cardboard box. But it's plastic first, then cardboard, then like alfoil, aluminum, like a little bit of metal, and then more plastic. So it's like all slammed together. So no one's gonna take that apart. Like there's no one that's sitting at the recycling center like, yay, peeling the plastic back and then the cardboard and then it's like full of like old soy milk, like it's rotten and gross. So those things are really hard to recycle. So even though they say they are recyclable, it's not economically efficient enough to actually separate those materials, and they're never going to make something of equal value. Same with plastics. Say you have like a plastic bottle, like a water bottle, and you throw it in the recycling bin. Technically, if we had like a proper recycling system or better communications around what is actually recyclable in every area, it might work. However, you're not just putting your like pure plastic bottles in this bin. You're also putting your like oily pizza boxes and like last night's takeout containers that you think might be recyclable, but you're like, yeah, put it in
Yeah.
there. It's like you're putting your metal cans that might still have coconut cream in there, or like some remnants of beans or whatever, like all this crap, or like your wine bottles but the lid's not totally on, or whatever that's going in the recycling bin. All that crap, that food crap, is like contaminating all the other materials, making it dirty. And that's why China stopped accepting our recyclables last year. So this is where the shit hit the fan in terms of our global waste market, because we used to just be like, yay, we recycle, send it away, send it on. We weren't recycling anything domestically. Like maybe some glass and metal, those are like pretty easy to recycle, but like plastics, no way. The states, like Western countries, don't want any hand in that dirty, messy business of plastics. So we sent it to China until China was like, your plastics are so dirty. They were actually having to landfill most of the plastics they received from us. So they just had to be like, no more stuff. So yes, there is technology that could recycle plastics and potentially make it into something of equal value. However, our plastics are so freaking contaminated that it costs way too much to clean them and then actually get them to become something of equal value. So they're always downcycled. So they're too contaminated because they're all bajillion different kinds of plastic. So no one's sorting them out. And so they get downcycled to something of lesser value. So like some of the things that are being manufactured are like park benches or like building materials or like carpets maybe, but they still require a lot of the time virgin plastics to make them truly strong and durable to bind it all together.
Virgin plastics.
Yeah.
So are those, if we had a world of virgin plastics, and I feel terrible. I have a plastic water bottle here.
What are you doing? Oh,
If
I'm allergic across the screen. I'm gonna have a rat.
if we had a plastic bottle of virgin plastic, this thing would be totally Gucci, and I could recycle it and be completely okay.
No. Virgin plastics is all plastics. Like your plastic water bottle is virgin plastics.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're trying to do is create a market for, like, what would be great is if we could create a market for recycled plastics. So even though I'm like anti-plastic and I don't want any bar of it, I still have to use it, right? Like so much of the technology, I try to buy used everything where I can. I try to buy used technology. But if I can't find something, like a lot of swimwear is made with stretch, because natural fibers stretch out, but they don't always stretch back. So I try to support recycled plastic swimwear and activewear. And this is important because we're creating a market, we're creating a demand for recycled plastics, so that there's actually some value in recycling your plastic bottle. That currently is made out of virgin plastics. So they're extracting fossil fuels like ancient dinosaurs, pulling it out as in the form of oil, and then manipulating it chemically to be this hard plastic. But hold up the bottle again. So the paper label is a different material, and it has glue on it, and the lid is a different material. So if you threw that whole thing into the bin, even though the plastic bottle is actually like a really highly recyclable PET, number one, that is a really highly recyclable material, because it has the label and the lid. It probably wouldn't get recycled because it's no one wants to take the lid off and take the label off. So like, we need way more information and education around what's recyclable, because people don't have any idea. So they just throw that whole thing and they feel good about themselves.
Right.
But really it's not going to go anywhere. And the other hectic thing is that every single district or town or region has totally different recycling laws, because it's not like one company is managing the recycling for the world. Every single different city has to hire, so like the government has to hire a private company who's going to drive around and collect our bins and bring them to their site, where they're either going to landfill all the trash, or they're going to recycle. And they go through all the recycling, they literally dump it and then put it on a conveyor belt. And there's a few humans, and there's a few lasers and like optical sensors that are like, and magnets that are grabbing the metal and different things, sorting the glass and the plastic. So, and then they bale it all together like resources, and they try to sell it on the global waste market. And if they can't sell it, they don't want it. So they change the recycling, and then your city is responsible for communicating that to the citizens, and no one knows what's recyclable and what's not. Mm-hmm. And now that China doesn't take our plastics, they're even more strict about what they won't accept, but nobody knows it. So they just keep throwing all their stuff in the bin and thinking it's this magical system that's working for them.
So when China stopped accepting it, I'm assuming we're taking these massive ships, shipping it, hopefully none of it's spilling straight into the ocean that way. And then when it gets there and they say we can't take it, do these ships just come back and then go into landfills?
Yeah. Pretty much. It's been like mass chaos and panic, and yet most people haven't heard about it. People are switching on more to it now. I think the straw bans have been good about building people's awareness, and as well as the Ocean Cleanup Project, which is really good. It's helped people kind of like, it's helped plastics break through onto the global consciousness, which is important. But yeah, we tried to send all of our stuff to China. China said no. So now a lot of it's going to landfill. Also, we tried to push it off to other countries like in Southeast Asia. So Malaysia was taking it at first, and then they were like, wait, we don't have the infrastructure to deal with all this crap. Like, we can't take it either. India has now said no. So a lot of these countries where we were literally just trying to dump our trash, like this contaminated plastic that is not cost efficient to make into anything useful, trying to dump it in these countries that can barely manage their own waste. Like, it's really a social justice issue when it comes down to it. Yes, environmental, but what about these people, these humans that are going to have to live in our Western waste? It's disgusting.
Well, it's interesting because with that much focus and that big of a problem, you'd think it'd be a multi-billion-dollar industry to solve such a crisis. So
yeah,
we
there's
had
a lot of opportunity.
Absolutely. I big shout out to Daniela Fernandez. She was on the podcast. She started the Sustainable Ocean Alliance, which is a venture fund that particularly funds only companies that are developing products or solutions to help the environment. You know, I think there's going to be a much bigger change that way, because if people, it's funny because I brought this water bottle specifically for this time with you, because, you know, I could drink this water bottle, throw it in the blue bin, feel really good, throw it in the blue bin out there. And I'm like, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. Yep. But truthfully, that's not the case. And first of all, I got to say, your energy and enthusiasm, incredible. Okay. I need to tell you that, like, woo, like whatever you're drinking, keep that up. But something that's so captivating about your story and about your lifestyle and all that is you'll see sometimes you'll post a story on Instagram and you'll go dumpster diving. You'll go into a dumpster or a trash can and you'll just start pulling out piece to piece of piece. And you're looking at it and you're like, yo, what is this girl doing? She's just taking out trash. And you go the next level where you look at every piece and say, is this recyclable? Is this not? And then you even go one more step and I think you compose it yourself. You bury it and see if it's actually recyclable. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's me. I perform waste audits publicly on my Instagram for companies or whomever wants it. And it's really fun. It's a really cool way to assess the trash that you're creating or that a business is creating. And it's fun for me. It's dirty, but it's fun because it's really interesting. And then to go through it all. So I go through the trash cans and the recycling, and I also tell like all the departments of the business to hold onto their trash, and we go through it together to find solutions or ways around all this trash that's being created that we're sending away, off site, putting responsibility for the things that we've created into someone else's hands, which feels so bizarre to me. Like, it feels so irresponsible to be like, here, I created all this waste, but like, you deal with it. And then me feel better about that. That doesn't really add up for me ethically. So yeah, I'll go through the waste and figure out, okay, like what, there's all these like, I'm big on busting greenwashing because there's a lot of myths going around things that are like eco, but then you actually look and you're like, this is just plastic. How did you get away with marketing this as eco?
Greenwashing. That's amazing.
Oh my God. It's huge thing. Yeah. Keep your eyes peeled. Got to stay savvy. It's out there. So even going through their trash, I found a lot of like eco bags. So like bags that say like compostable or biodegradable. And I was like, let's test that. Because the funny thing about bioplastics and like plant-based and compostable and biodegradable plastics or things that say that is that sure, they may break down, but they require such sophisticated conditions to fully break down back into like dirt. That it's very rare that these conditions exist. So they require like these commercial grade composting facilities that are like huge, highly regulating the oxygen, the microbes, the temperature. They're turning it to aerate it. They're moving it. Yeah, sophisticated, intense, don't exist. Like,
so it's almost like the pharmaceutical industry when they say that this study works, against 50% of the time in a placebo test, et cetera. They're creating this mimic solution where, yes, this is recyclable, but you need you need to be on the top of Mount Everest with
totally
perfect conditions. Interesting.
With alien blood and like a wizard's wand, it's just the conditions don't align. So that's my feeling about recycling, and my feeling about all this like greenwashing, like fake solutions that are bioplastics and compostable things, because it's just so rare that they actually break down. So we have a pretty sophisticated compost at the farm where I'm currently living, and so I'm testing a lot of these green bags that we found in the bin to see if they really are compostable. So it's fun. It's kind of like fun to get hands-on and share that experience of experimenting with these materials, because I think I'm super visual. So I like to use my Instagram and my YouTube and those sorts of channels to bring people along for that experience and be like, look what we found, like all these compostable bags, like let's really put them to the test. And I call out companies all the time. And, it's important. We have to hold each other accountable to these claims that we're making. And if it's false, well, that's not fair.
It's interesting because it seems like the whole infrastructure is effed up. To solve this problem, we need to solve it from the top. Do you think, I recently saw Bernie Sanders on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he was talking about one of the largest major issues that world powers are facing is climate change.
Yeah.
Do you think?
And yet they deny it.
It's interesting. It's very interesting. Do you think that governments in general are taking the overuse of plastic serious?
No, this is a tricky one because I think we're seeing like a very interesting shift in our politics, and a lot of right-wing governments are rising up, and it's really interesting. And I think that there can be a lot of sensitivity around this, especially felt by the youth who are studying science, and in school they're learning about the climate emergency and the melting of the ice caps and the forests on fire and the increased natural disasters, and it feels really urgent to them, and it feels really scary. And we're seeing 50% of fourth graders enrolling in therapy to deal with their panic around the climate changing. And then we see our politicians denying that there's any problem with the climate. So it's really a head trip for our youth. And I really want to express like sincere empathy or compassion for the youth, and also let them know that we've got them and we understand and we support them, and that we're working for these solutions. And I think that that's where there's a bit of a shift in terms of our power dynamic, because I think it used to be top down. We used to say, like you said, like, do we have to, we need full system redesign. We need full infrastructure change. Like, this is no longer working. The industrial era of just like extracting oil and burning it is no longer working. Extracting oil and making like single-use plastics, that doesn't work. We polluted our planet to the brink. Like, it's saturated with carbon. The atmosphere is tapped. Like, our planet is literally cooking. Like, we can't do it anymore. So that no longer works. And so top down, I think there's been a little bit of a crumbling. It's beginning to crumble. And we're seeing that in our communication technology, because power is no longer vertical. It's coming to be more horizontal or lateral, so that you're more powerful the more connected you are, the more network you have. And this is what's so beautiful and inspiring, and why I think youth are so, they should feel empowered, because they're at an advantage with their ability to use technology. Again, it's the same as plastics, right? It's not the technology that's bad, it's the way we use it. Mm-hmm. So if we can, our governments are using media to push fear and to freak us out. And like, our current president just ran a campaign with plastic straws to raise money for his campaign next year, just blatantly dissing liberal paper straws because they get soggy and don't work. I mean, this is just like, it's ridiculous. So instead of empowering that media by reacting to it, we should be empowered by the way that we can use technology and media to connect and spread solutions and support each other. Because the more that we connect and spread solutions, and like Daniela's efforts and like your efforts to amplify these solutions, we're all doing the thing. Like, this is the system redesign that we crave and we're after, because it's not going to happen from our government. Like, amazing if we got a Democrat in office that was going to push for climate policy, and adjust our plastics usage. But the truth is, like, big oil still is quite powerful. So how do we do it? We as individuals matter. Like, our buying power, we're consumers. Like, we withhold our dollars. We don't buy plastics. We don't spend money on businesses and companies that are out of alignment with our ethics. Like, we really need to be hardcore about this right now for a certain period until we've made the change, and then we can relax and enjoy and party, be happy in our beautiful, magical planet that we've saved.
Yeah. It's so interesting because, there's so many people around the world that their lifestyles rely on everyday, say, fishing or for whatever it is. And, we get so angry when people kill sharks, for example, but there's some places in the world that if they don't kill a shark, their family dies. Yeah. And it's like finding this some sort of equilibrium where we can have enough sharks to be able to keep everyone happy. It's just so interesting. I mean, is there a certain country that you think is a very good kind of icon that if everyone did what they did, that we would be on a better path? Or any initiatives you've seen from a government that have really blown your mind?
I don't know. I think that it's hard for me to really get behind any government action, because I've been so disappointed by the government, like the policy change that I've been a part of and like that I've written on. Like, I worked on the policy to ban plastic bags in California. And it was so cool to work on that. That was like 7 or 8 years ago. And it was amazing when that got passed. And we passed it in Santa Barbara and LA and all these other little counties, and then the state passed it. But then they rolled out thicker reusable plastic bags. So it was really frustrating. And so I think writing our government and signing petitions and calling government officials is really important. But I really like to focus on empowering the individual to make change, because I think, again, we don't want to pass off responsibility to our government, our elected officials, because that system doesn't feel super working for us right now. I feel like I want to, you know, I see the Greta Thunbergs and like the individuals standing up for a planet. And I say, yeah, make sure before you like even put pressure or point the finger on our government officials, turn the finger. What is it? Like they say, like every finger pointing away has 3 fingers pointing back at you. So it's like, before we ever judge anyone else, even Donald Trump or whoever, like before we judge anyone else, let's make sure that we personally are living like really conscious, aware lifestyle, because it just feels hypocritical to say you drive, you know, like you're using all this plastic. Well, I still drive a car that burns fossil fuels. You know, like it's really important to me to be super transparent and be like, I have to use plastic headphones. Like I don't have like a wooden set yet. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
there's an opportunity there. And if someone was making wooden headphones, I would interview them on my podcast and I would like promote them on my Instagram, because I'm like, people buy this, support this solution.
Hell yeah.
Right. But like in terms of like a government, I mean, it's hard to, like, for example, I think, you know, Bali just banned plastics, and it's like, I'm going to go there and figure out, like, did they really, where is it going? You know, what are they replacing it with? So it's one thing to have a headline like California bans the bag, but what does that really look like? What does that mean for the local businesses? Who is that putting out of business? What's the economic impact? You know, is it just replacing it with another single-use item that's going to be worse for the environment? You know, are they replacing it with paper bags that's then cutting down rainforests? You know, so everything we do has an impact and a consequence. And I think it's less about being like, wow, we should all do what this country does, you know, and more being like, what can I do? What's my impact?
I like what you mentioned, because you said that a lot of times when you see people that are posting and yelling and saying, don't do this, don't do that, and it's just making a lot of noise on the internet, you almost just like a fugazi. It's like not even real. It doesn't really move you to action. But then you see someone like yourself who's doing the damn thing. I mean, you inspire me to make conscious changes, because I'm like, yo, if she can do it, I can do it. And I like what you said, that people aren't talking the talk. We still use plastic every single day. We use plastic in, like, there's some things we can't get away, whether it be a car, whether it be, you know, even reducing pregnancies with condoms. Without plastic, it would be
use condoms. The only single-use plastic I endorse. Use condoms.
Yeah, you know, there's so many of these things, but I think that the two largest things that have come to the biggest attention amongst the average consumer is, number one, at our grocery stores, right? Grocery stores are saying don't reuse your plastic bag, and then the plastic straws. What do you think are the largest plastic leaks in the system every single day that maybe constitute the largest? And I'm talking about in my normal lifestyle. When I wake up, I drink my coffee, I go grocery shopping, I drive to work, you know, I go whatever, I go to a restaurant. What aspect are we just blowing it the hardest?
So if you're talking about like your individual average Westerner and their daily life, I find that food packaging is the biggest contributor. So whenever I teach how to quit plastics, what the phasing is, like how do you phase it out? And the hardest part is food. Like everybody is going to the supermarket and they're like, oh my gosh, what can I even buy? I can't buy my frozen berries. I can't buy crackers. I can't buy hummus. I can't buy yogurt. I can't buy milk. I can't, you know, all these things are like, I can't. And so, and like you go out, you get your coffee, it's in a takeaway cup, or you forgot, you haven't built the habit yet because you don't have a cup. So you're like, I can't even have a coffee. You can't get like a sample of ice cream. You can't get a smoothie. You can't get a salad. You can't get nachos, like all these things that feel like I can't. However, what I teach is reframing that. So instead of it feeling like sacrifice and a challenge and hard and like, I'm so deprived, like that's not sustainable. You're not going to be like, this is fun, I'm killing it. No. Instead, it's like, okay, if you forget your cup, you go without. And, or maybe you sit down at the cafe and use the cup that they have for here and like slow down a bit. Like, why are you so busy? You know, it's like if you are shopping at a supermarket and everything you buy is packaged in plastic, maybe you need to reassess the kind of food you're feeding your body. Most things that are packaged in plastic are processed. our body has a harder time breaking down those substances that are processed. It's full of all these weird chemicals that are further and further away from a whole food that our body recognizes, like fresh fruits or fresh vegetables, or legumes or whatever, nuts, seeds. So the more packaged the food is, the more separation we have from our food or from nature. So the more separation we have from like the pure natural thing that's going to give us vibrancy and give us energy and like fuel our body and nourish our body. Like that's what we're after when we're feeding ourselves and when we're shopping. We want something that's going to like give us energy and like make us healthy and vital and shiny, you know, but instead we're buying all these chips and ice cream and blah, blah, what all, like all these packaged stuff, yogurt, hummus. Yeah, maybe started off as chickpeas, the hummus, but then it's added all these preservatives and then it's packaged in plastic. So like what's leaching, you know? So it's like we're buying all these things that aren't necessarily the best choice for us anyways. It's just the most convenient and it's cheapest. And it's packaged and there's marketing words like natural.
So it's almost like there's not an alternative as in terms of the materials that companies can use to package all of these frozen dinners. You know, plastic is so available. It's so cheap. It's no, you know, if I want to become an entrepreneur right now and I want to go build a product, I'm thinking plastic. I mean, what's the other alternative? Glass, right? What else is
Well, I mean, even metal cans are lined with plastic. So it's tricky, you know, it's hard to do it right. And you know, I always say like, I don't want to freak anyone out. We can all only be responsible for ourselves and we should all just do the best we can with the options we have available. Not everyone has access to farmers markets. Not everyone has access to bulk foods, you know, so we just have to do our best with what we can. And maybe putting plastics is not even an option. You know, maybe you can just like walk more, ride your bike. Maybe there's other ways you can reduce your footprint that don't involve plastics, and that's super valid. You know, so like there's many ways to I used to say reduce your impact, but I feel like making these choices actually increases your impact in a positive way. So it's like impact accountability. But you're right, like there's definitely opportunities for replacements, different materials than plastics. It's something I'm really interested in and I really love it. A whole other conversation, just like exploring all of those options. But my point is that it's less about finding a material to replace plastics, because we've seen how even that has consequences with the bioplastics, these cornstarch cutlery that, if you know anything about corn agriculture, like it's a monocrop that kills the soil, like miles and miles and miles of corn sprayed with pesticides, glyphosate, Roundup, which causes cancer. And the corn crops are genetically modified to resist the glyphosate. So everything else dies but the corn. So all the soil, all the microbiology in the soil, all the like bacteria and fungi and little microbes dies. And so it's just the corn, and the corn then it doesn't die, but it still absorbs that chemical, which we then eat, and causes cancer and all these diseases. And the soil, instead, because they can't get any nutrients from the soil, they have to spread synthetic fertilizers on the soil to feed the corn. So the corn is actually fed from synthetic plastic, petroleum-based fertilizers. It's so crazy. And then we make all these like bioplastics, high fructose corn syrups. Corn's just in everything. It's so bad. So like all these processed things are just full of all these crazy cancer-causing fillers. So anything packaged in plastic, I'm so grateful that I've made this choice to avoid those things, because I know that it's not good for my body. It's not good for the planet. But if it has ingredients or a label, it's probably full of stuff that my body doesn't recognize.
I think that's a big trend right now, is people are they're done with high fructose corn syrup. I think everyone pretty much agrees that high fructose corn syrup is terrible for us. Yeah. And now all of a sudden you see these brands, you see Heinz is you think of tomato, because they're like the number one. I think they have a monopoly on ketchup. I mean, you never see other brands, but now they have big tubs of no high fructose corn syrup. But then when you look in the back, it's like, a lot of those ingredients are very similar. You don't know what to look after, though. I mean, I was reading, I think it was How Not to Die was one book. Brain Makers was another one. And they were talking about the actual ingredients you have to avoid when looking at food. And the only way to know is to look at behind the food. That's the one thing we got to be thankful for our food system. people do have to say what the ingredients are at the back of those foods. And if they were more educated on that, I think they'd be able to make better choices.
However, you don't have to put labels or list ingredients on a lot of cleaning products. So we're like cleaning our houses with fully toxic chemicals that are really bad for us. You don't have to label a lot of cosmetics. So we don't know what is in our mascara and all these things that we're putting on our faces on a daily basis. Like there's a lot of ingredients and chemicals that are banned in Europe and Asia that are fully legal in the States. It's really crazy. We're very lax about the sorts of things that are allowed into products. So I again, yes, read labels. Yes, if you don't understand, the majority of the ingredients, your body probably won't understand and process them.
Yeah, I feel like we need to funnel as much money as humanly possible into solutions to find ways to degrade the plastic. Because, I mean, consumerism isn't going to stop the usage, right? It's going to continue to grow. I mean, we just need to figure out ways to deal with it and contain it. I guess the same concept of dealing with the carbon. So you're very interesting in the fact that when I met you're pioneering this industry, you actually teach workshops online, offline, all around the world, teaching people how to live this lifestyle and things they can do. I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but what are kind of the key 1 to 5 things that you tell people, look, these are the 3, like the buckets that you can start today? I know you touched on some, like, avoiding plastic food and stuff like that, but what are those 3 or 5 things that if everyone just did these 3 things, everything would be way better off?
Yeah. I mean, I think, the starting point is always to avoid the top 4. So this is what I quit 10 years ago. I started with these 4, and it was straws, which a lot of people aren't using at all these days, which is awesome. Plastic bottles. So start to bring your own bottle. Like it's a habit that you have to form, you just like start to build that contextual cue when you grab your keys and you get your like gym bag or whatever, put it in your car, put the bottle in. And if you don't have your bottle, don't just buy a plastic one, like suffer. Like you have to build the habit by really sticking to it, committing to it. And remember, like the plastic doesn't biodegrade for 1,000 years. So like bring your bottle so you can drink. The 4th is bags, so plastic bags. So like just never use a plastic bag. You don't need to. You can get creative if you don't have a reusable bag, which you should because they're everywhere. Like people just give those up for free these days. But if you don't, if you just happen to accidentally go grocery shopping without planning, go look around the grocery store and find a cardboard box. Like all the food gets shipped to the store in cardboard boxes, and then a lot of times they use those boxes for the displays of food. So like go to the chips section and get a Doritos box, whatever. Take your grocery store in that box. You can like balance down your head, carry it, whatever. It's fine. So get creative. Use your shirt for a bag. Like you don't need to use plastic. It doesn't biodegrade. Get it out of your life. And then the 4th one is funny because I originally would call it like food packaging. Like I meant like the smoothie cups and coffee cups but then that started kind of like ever expanding outward, right? So I think the 4th one, so we've got straws, bags, bottles, and then cups, if that works for you. So bring your own cup to events, just put it in your bag, let it be a talking point to like show off how eco you are and how much you know about saving the planet. Bring it for your coffee, all these things for your smoothie. I like to just carry a jar around. So this is like a really handy way to just tick all those boxes, is if you carry a mason jar around, like a large mason jar, you can put your water in that, you can put a coffee in that, you can put a smoothie in that. If you like get a salad, you can put your salad, your lunch in that, you just clean it and then you can use it for water, so that's a really good solution to tick a lot of those boxes. Because the 4th one, the food packaging, whether that's coffee cups or smoothie cups or salad boxes or your like pre-packed veggies or salad in a container, like this can really expand outward. So that'll be like your launch pad where you just kind of choose one thing. Maybe it's coffee cups that you're going to focus on, but then let it expand outward. So that's kind of like a starting point in terms of quitting plastics. If you want to really assess the amount of plastics that you're using, do a waste audit. So hold on to all your trash that you create for a week that you usually would put in the recycling bin or that you would put in the trash bin, like everything. Like hold on to sauce packets, hold on to straws, hold on to like drink stirs, hold on to ketchup packets, like whatever, things that like you usually throw away, or like, festival wristbands, airline tickets, receipts. Receipts are coated in plastic. Don't touch them. They're bad. So you save all this stuff and then you go through it at the end of the week and you're like, okay, like got it. It helps you identify the sources of your trash so then you can change the sources. Again, it's like kind of what we were talking about. We need to redesign the system. Well, a lot of times we need to redesign our personal system first before we really know where we need to focus in. If you see that there's lots of like food packaging, you know, if there's lots of like takeaway food or like sauce packets, like tons of sauce packets, it's like, oh, maybe I should just get a sauce bottle and like carry it around with me. Or, you know, figure out the solutions based on the sources that you've identified in your waste audit.
It's very interesting because it's like a lot of people, we have shopping issues and our financial issues, and we're like, where did all the money go? And then once you start keeping a budget, like that's what I do now. Every single day I have this Excel spreadsheet that I was using Mint before, but I still didn't feel like it was my thing. So now I created this budget where I have to see every penny that leaves my account, and you're blown away. So you're taking that same ideology, applying it to the plastic waste, doing a waste audit, which I've never heard before, which is brilliant. And seeing how much
waste audit.
Hashtag waste audit. Yeah, you gotta.
And hashtag trash jar as well. So that's the jar. I keep all of my trash. Like my week of trash is like nothing. So like I keep my year of trash in a trash jar. And it's super awesome. At the end of the year, I get to take it out and I get to see all the weird stuff that I've created. And that helps me kind of be like, all right, Kate, like, okay, broken surfboard leash. Like, are there any like places where I can recycle this surfboard leash? Or like, are there recycled plastic surfboard leashes? Then I can kind of be like, this is something that like my lifestyle doesn't have a solution for yet. So like, let me work on that. Or like, oh my gosh, so many like plastic festival lanyards, because I speak of a lot of festivals. Like maybe before I say yes, I say, hey, what are your tickets? Like, what is your, is there, or have you thought about, that's the point. That's where we can really make change, is by asking questions and pushing these festivals or companies or whoever to like rethink their packaging or their materials or these things that they probably know that they need to do better. But like, until we start pushing them and asking them and being like, hey, you should. And me, I'm Plastic Free Mermaid, I'll promote you if you do. Like, that's where I can like leverage my following. I'm like, if you do this right, I'll work with you. If you don't, I'm sorry, come back to me when you can.
I love that.
It's so rad when they come back and they're like, we fixed our packaging. I'm like, oh, all right, let's do it.
It's cool because you're leading by example, and you're doing these retreats and you're teaching people, you're creating these little followers of the Plastic Free Mermaid lifestyle. And tell us about these mermaid retreats, by the way.
Oh, they're so magical. I have been, I travel, like as I mentioned, I'm a mermaid, so I free dive and I love to swim with like whales and whale sharks and dolphins.
So cool. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And like sail around tropical islands and just be at one with nature and like live at sea. And so a lot of people were like, we want to come. So I've created these mermaid retreats where people can join me on a magical ocean adventure. I take probably like 8 to 10 people, and there's various locations, and we just have epic ocean adventures where we swim with ocean creatures or go sailing and I'm a yoga instructor, so we do yoga every day and we meditate and we work through the chakras and like ground ourselves and become these like empowered ocean warriors or eco warriors, or however you feel like, connecting to the goddess within. It's really important to connect to our spirit and to find like our purpose and our path and our calling and our passion. I teach plastic free. The entire retreat is plastic free. We make all the food. We make shampoo, conditioner, sunscreen, all of that. I teach environmental activism on these retreats, so how to like create a campaign, how to build organized community,
everything.
Everything.
The whole everything you can think about. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just super important for me to bring the magic back, like help people connect to the magic of nature, of the ocean, like that wonder and awe, because that's where this energy comes from. It's like that's where we can like refill our cup to be able to be like, all right, I can take on the government that's denying climate, like I can take on the plastic pollution. I can take on all this like ubiquitous plastic packaging. So I know the magic of staring into a whale's eye.
Oh, the magic of staring into a whale's eye. Wow. So epic. I love the idea of the audit thing. I just looked on GoDaddy and I looked up garbageaudit.com, and it's available right there. If anyone's thinking about it, that's a sweet domain name.
Yeah.
So Kate, you're pioneering, you're doing your thing. This is something we really like to ask anybody that's achieving great things and making moves like yourself and living the dream. And it's going back into time before your plastic-free mermaid capade, before this whole thing, like, you know, baby Kate, maybe right before you got into, right after high school, right before college or whatever. If you could have went back in time and said maybe 1, 2, or 3 things that would have changed everything for you, could have saved you a ton of time, could have saved you a ton of money, headache, heartache, any of those things, what do you think would be those 3 biggest life changes that you would tell yourself?
Hmm. Wow, it's so interesting because I love this. This is a bit of a challenge for me because I've accepted so much that this whole journey has been so beautiful and organic and perfect, and that all of the struggles and all of the obstacles and trauma and all of this has been like so essential to this natural this natural journey that I've lived, this really organic evolution of my path and finding my purpose and my calling, and then like wavering and coming back to my alignment. Um, so
It's tough
something,
because it's like, you know,
yeah,
our past makes us who we are today. And it's like, I wouldn't give up anything, but it's like,
yeah,
I
I'm
don't know. There's
grateful.
a few decisions that, you know, I didn't have to do, you know, like, but think
Mm,
about it. If you could have went back,
yeah.
it's almost like talking to the new generation of people that are right getting into that. What would you say to those people? You know, what are
Yeah,
some
I like
things
that.
you
I
might
like that question. I like that question better. I think, I mean, when I think about the things that really did serve me, it's my yoga practice. Like I practice yoga every day. And I mean, there's a few things. Like I have kind of this like recipe that brings me back to like into alignment. Like if I'm kind of like wavering and I'm like, oh, I don't feel good about this, or like I feel lost or things aren't flowing. Like I know the things that bring me back, you know, like yoga, going for a surf or going for a dive in the water, like jumping in the ocean, going on a long walk in nature, like eating healthy foods, like maybe doing like a water fast for like a day or something to flush the system. So it's like knowing your recipe and really honoring it. Like, how do you come back to yourself where you're like, okay, everything else might be chaos, but at least like I'm taking care of myself. And so like I'm a clear channel. So like whatever wisdom that's coming through, because like I don't know what I'm doing. I'm literally a channel for this stuff. Like I just like receive the guidance and I do it. And I just like, I'm so happy and cheerful because I'm like, wow, like the world is worth saving. Like you know, I just take care of my body and I take care of myself through yoga and swimming and, you know, all these things that I know are my recipe. And then I'm able to have the energy to continue to carry out this work. So advice, yeah, definitely do yoga, have a spiritual practice, whether that's yoga or meditation or just sitting in nature, like quiet time so that you can actually like shut the mind off and just release to spirit. So important. And having a relationship with nature is like probably a second one, but like that one's so important for us because we're so very disconnected. Like even right now, yeah, these walls are made of wood, you know, but and this light is probably like natural light, but we're so boxed in. So stepping out and breathing the fresh air and feeling the sunshine and feeling water on your skin, submersing yourself in water is so important. So having a spiritual practice, having a nature practice.
The third one is avoid plastic.
This made me quit plastics. Yeah. I guess maybe like community is coming up for me, like having, like seeking out like-minded people so that you feel support. And if you can't think of who those people might be, creating it. And we're so fortunate. I know you mentioned this, like to have at the beginning, to have technology, like we're so lucky to have the ability to connect with like-minded people and have these conversations and learn and grow.
Yeah.
So maybe I want to say community, but I also want to say just be open. Like don't be so rigidly attached to any one thing, you know, just be open to change and evolution as the world changes and as what society and humanity needs. Like, yeah, plastics, but also climate and also spirituality and like eco trauma, you know, like I'm flexible and I'm malleable and I am like allow myself to flow where my energy is needed. So I think that's what I would tell people, or myself, my younger self, is just to stay open and to stay flexible.
Powerful. Achieving a state of flow. That I feel like
Yes.
that's got to be on everyone's bucket list, that they do once and they do forever. Once you're
Mm.
in flow, everything feels so good. You know, time
And
stops.
knowing how to bring yourself back to flow. Like being in flow is like, but it's like when you're out of flow, it's like, oh my God, I'm out. you know, what do I do? So having those things, like I have 5 things that always bring me back. And I know that even if I can't do all 5, it's fine. If I do 1, I'm closer. So like knowing those things and then actually doing them to bring you back to flow. So
it took you a while to get it though. You know, it took you a lot of years to figure it out. And I mean, it's a journey and everyone goes through that journey. Have you gone through a point in your life that was real dark, that you hit rock bottom? Because typically what I see is people that are able to stand up and preach something with such power and velocity as you're doing, they went through some serious shit that has, you know, mentally or just spiritually that really dogged them. Is there anything you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, everybody goes through their own versions of trauma, and I don't think anyone's is I mean, I want to be sensitive in talking about trauma, because I feel like people's darkness is dark regardless of how deep it is in comparison to other people's darkness, and all of that is really valid, and there's so many ways to be healed and to reach out and find support for that. I personally, my mom died when I was 19 in a car accident. It was really sudden. And it really rocked me. I'm an only child, and she was an incredible woman. She fought for women's rights. She was a super incredible, high achieving businesswoman, really involved in community. We always did service trips and volunteered in soup kitchens constantly. And she was really fun. She was an amazing lady and like amazing mom and role model. So for her to just be gone,
that must have flipped you upside down.
Absolutely. I was a business economics major initially in college, and I switched to a philosophy major because I just was like, what are we doing here? What is this? Like, if this source of unconditional love and guidance just was away and gone, it was like this incredible void. And I had so many questions, and studying philosophy mainly gave me more questions to give me many answers.
The rabbit hole.
Yeah. But it was really beautiful to exercise, and you know, I was really interested in ethics, and I was really interested in environmental ethics, and I found a lot of philosophers that really made me think about, like, what is our purpose on the planet? Why are we here? What are we doing? What do we need? What can we do for each other? What matters? What doesn't matter? You know, how should we live in relation to other people, other beings, other creatures, small and large, and like what is living with integrity? What does all this mean? And I think losing my mom at that young age really made me question and try and understand my purpose on this planet. You know, I no longer had this like incredible woman to love and try to make proud. So like, what was I going to do?
Right.
And I felt incredible healing from the ocean. You know, like I'd lost this source. I felt this huge void in me, and it felt really healed by floating in the ocean and experiencing this like really magical, vast, incredible ocean, this expansive, powerful, raging, calm sea, you know, that had so many faces. And surfing, like developing such respect for the force of the ocean.
Right.
So the ocean really helped fill that void. And
so almost when you're surfing, you almost feel like you're right, almost kind of right back with her, those feelings, because you're right back into the sift.
Yeah, I think it's not so much that I feel like I'm back with her, but I feel like I'm with Mother Earth. You know, like I feel like I'm connected to Mama Sea.
Mama Sea.
Yeah, like it's like a whole different. It's a. You know, I definitely took it personally when I learned that plastics were threatening the oceans, because I was like, wait a minute, like I don't want to lose this as well. You know, like I'm going to fight for this because I can, and it's important. And like, we rely on the health of our planet to survive. Like, where is the disconnect? It's so crazy to me. So yeah, I think that was extremely traumatic and really hard. And it took me a long time to really heal and understand and accept. And I think also to not feel like a victim, and to step into my power and say, wow, I actually am so privileged. Oh my God, so privileged to have had this incredible woman, this source of love and inspiration for 19 years, and to be raised, you know, like white and in the US with so much opportunity, like I'm not going to waste that. Like I would be crazy to just like wallow or feel bad for myself. No way. Like I'm going to fight for the planet that is like being pillaged. You know, like this is injustice on so many levels, and I've experienced loss already, and I don't want to lose this. And I also, you know, I'm strong because of that. Like it built character, and I'm you know, I can stand up for this, and I can travel the world, and you know, it as hard as it was losing my mother, it also freed me in these ways. And this is my silver lining, right? Like I would never choose this, but I can see how her death and how that trauma and how that journey and that sort of like rite of passage of coming into my own self and stepping into my power has been so essential for my journey as an eco warrior.
Thank you so much for sharing. Eco warrior. That explains a lot about you, just like how passionate you are. I mean, that's another level. I mean, the way you see the world is just very different than a lot of people. And it makes sense on how you can be so passionate every single day and show up every single day at such a high frequency, because you're completely in tune with what you're doing and you know what you're doing, and it brings you happiness and you're in your element. So I really appreciate that. I almost wish we brought that up in the beginning, because that gives context to the whole, everything you say. So Kay, I know you're busy. I know you're out in Australia living the dream. Right? I wish I would be there. Oh my gosh, the scuba diving, unreal. But this is kind of a flagship question I ask anyone that is, you know, building a business, being an entrepreneur, because you are an entrepreneur. You're living this lifestyle, and you've started this business, seminars, all these things. What would you say to that person right now that is maybe working a 9-to-5 that they potentially hate, they feel disvalued, they're not stoked, they just don't feel like they're living their passion, and they want to start something new, but something's holding them back? Or that person that's crushing it, making all the monies, they got the Equinox gym membership, they're feeling good, their lifestyle's great, they got the great house, the dog, but they just don't feel fulfilled. And there's a part of them that wants to start a business, wants to go plastic free mermaid on y'all, wants to start a seminar, but they're just terrified to start the what ifs, going off on your own. What would you say to that person that's kind of right on the cusp of making that decision?
It's funny. Those are the people that usually come on my mermaid retreats, because it's, you know, it's hard to know what our passion is or what our purpose is if we don't pause and take the time to develop that connection to self and inside and to spirit. And sometimes it takes like a really magical experience with nature for us to clear away the bullshit and clear away everything, the to-do list and all of that, and just like really settle into ourself, our true self, our true like higher self, not just like the self that's going to the gym and the self that's like showing up to the office or like crushing it. It's the self, the higher self, the spirit that chose this physical vessel. So what would I tell people? Yeah, go on a mermaid retreat if you would love to have you. But I think it's so important to keep it simple. And for me, you know, instead of telling someone to, you know, even go on a mermaid retreat or like develop a business plan or, you know, journal and try and find something that like you feel passionate about, or just like what if you see yourself, you know, there's a meditation that I do, like where visualize yourself in 10 years, your ideal life, if all your dreams come true, like what are you doing? Like how do you spend an average day in your dream life? And like, how did you get there? Like, what are your accomplishments to get you there? And then you back up in like 5 years and 3 years and 1 year. So there's like so many things we can do, exercises, but to keep it really simple, what came to me was to develop a relationship with your breath. So I'm a yogi. Yoga is all about the breath, pranayama. Prana is life force energy. It's believed that our soul enters our body when we, you know, exit the womb and take our first breath on our own, and the soul leaves the body when we exhale our last breath. And I think what all of us really are seeking, and what the world needs, is for us to have a deeper relationship with our true self, our spirit. And so taking deeper breaths, pausing, closing our eyes, taking 5 deep breaths, trying to clear the mind during those 5 deep breaths. It's a challenge. 5 seems like so little, so few. It's a handful, but it's a challenge, and connecting and clearing the mind of any thoughts for 5 deep breaths. If we can do that every day, we're developing this relationship with our breath, with our spirit. We're slowing down, we're pausing, we're feeling inward, we're developing a relationship with ourself, with our spirit. You know, we're not just like going, which is like so easy to be caught up in this productivity, this race. So I think keeping it super simple, taking 5 deep breaths a day, develop a relationship with breath.
Love that. Fantastic. So Kate, the mermaid herself, I appreciate your time so much. How can everybody that's listening to this podcast be able to reach out to you and continue following your journey?
Yes, thank you. So I'm on Instagram as Plastic Free Mermaid. I am on YouTube as Plastic Free Mermaid, Facebook Plastic Free Mermaid. My website is iquitplastics.com. So you can find all my mermaid retreats there. My blog is there, all the services. And then I've just launched a online course and certification program called We Quit Plastics, because it's not just me anymore, it's everybody. It's so exciting. So this is a course that you can participate in that's going to help you just phase plastics out of your life, and you'll get a little certification. And it's in beta test mode right now, so I'm actually just taking 10 people for this first month, so you can give me feedback, and it's going to be a really intimate experience if you do want to connect on that. So yeah, wequitplastics.com. And yeah, I just really look forward to connecting with others. And if you have solutions or plastic alternatives, definitely hit me up. Super curious to learn about all the solutions.
Kate, you're an angel. Thank you so much for sharing. We appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
All right. Hakuna Matata.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Len Jones Party of Two. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review and subscribe to stay up to date on our new episodes. And remember, hope is not a strategy. Keep making moves. Till next time, peace.